This is the best time to be in the UK. Right now in the UK, if you are not, as an international student, if you are not getting a job within those 2 years of graduate route, I think it's on you. It's definitely on you. And the worst kind of part-time job that I see a lot of students commit, especially from South Asia, is so I think the recruitment director called me into her office and she said, Danny, if you don't have any other visa, you cannot go on to this grad scheme. And I literally cried in that room. That's the biggest problem I see with international students in the UK. And mark these words, being idle is the biggest crime you could do. You cannot stay idle. Every day you're losing. I will say this on the podcast right now. My first part-time job, having worked in 4 different universities, nearly I would say I would have dealt with nearly 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 students personally, international students, and that's a huge number. UK's international student postgraduate market is very commercial. Let's talk about this elephant in the room.
Joining us today is Danny Mirza, Career Development Consultant at University of Northampton. Danny is an experienced career professional, a former international student turned career rocketeer professional, providing career rocketing advice and guidance to business and law students and graduates. Danny is a personal branding enthusiast and LinkedIn credible mentor with special area of expertise, which is the international student. That's why we are here today. He is a mentor on LinkedIn and encourages students to build a credible online presence. Danny, thank you so much for joining today.
You're welcome, Matthew. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be invited here to help international students. So yeah, let's get on with it. I'm so excited to help students with my career rocketing advice.
In your own term, right, what was your experience like being an international student here in the UK?
Lovely. I think let's go back in time. I came to the UK in 2018. I did my second master's. I had already, a lot of international students, we already have a master's from our country. Mm-hmm. Then we do our second and third master's here. So it was my second master's here at Lancaster University. And the university experience was fine. It was just in terms of getting the right kind of support for job searching, job hunting, and the right kind of advice as well. I'll give you an example because back in my time, there wasn't any PSW. It was discontinued, the post-study work visa, there wasn't any graduate route either at that time. And I knew that, but I was like, okay, but the companies would still give me some visas or something. So one thing that I did, which a lot of international students don't usually do, is when you land, you need to apply for grad schemes there and then. If you're landing in the September cohort, if you're landing in September, October time, that is the time to apply for these things. Somehow I applied for them. I was like, okay, let's make this happen. And that's very challenging because you come from a different educational background. And it is very challenging. Not everyone can do this, but you need strong motivation to get through all of that, because you land September or maybe end of September, you need to start applying and you do not know how to write those applications, do anything. And you just learn on your own. And I think one of the websites that really helped me at that time was TSR, the student room. Such a great website for international students, for any student, for that matter. I think that's where students were saying, okay, I wrote that, I did this. I was learning from a community of practice. But in terms of getting support, nothing against Lancaster or anything, but at that time, because there wasn't any PSW, no graduate route, there wasn't much focus on international careers advice. That's what I felt was lacking. Hence, the advice I got was, these companies used to come to pitch their graduate schemes to us being in Lancaster. They're like, please apply for these grad schemes. And when I used to go and ask them, do you get visas? Nearly all of them did not know that do they give visas, because usually they send, if you look at it, who do they send to these recruitment drives? Maybe recent grads, people who are already in grad schemes. They barely know these answers. And but I think this is the whole model which really hampers our growth in the UK. Hence they said, I'll get back to you to see if you sponsor visas or not. So I think that was the problem. But I was like, okay, let's just still apply. You never know, me coming from, I'm originally from Pakistan. So anything can work there. I was like, anything goes. I was like, okay, what if they like me? If the company really wants me, they'll give me the visa, right? It wouldn't be that tough. So I just started doing this and applied for nearly 27 grad schemes at that time. 2 months, 27 grad schemes new to the UK. And then I passed 17 of the psychometric test, which is the first stage, and then I got invited for 15 of these video interviews. I passed 5 of them out of 15, so it's shrinking down. And then I was invited to 2 graduate scheme assessment centers, which I went to as well. And one of them I can't mention, it's fine. It's one of them was the civil service fast stream. And that was the one I was really excited about. I was invited. That was my first time getting on a train. Can you imagine? You're so new to the UK and you're getting on a train for the first time in the UK for a grad scheme assessment center. And from Lancaster, I had to go to Newcastle. That's where the assessment center was. I did really fine, went through it, and then the bomb hit me. Because when I entered the room, it was so funny. And when you start the assessment center, every single person had to put their passports on one table. And all around me, there was only one green passport that was mine, and all of the rest passports were maroon. At that time, the British passport was maroon. And it was maroon passport was one green. I was like, okay, am I really that good or something is wrong? But okay, so I went through the whole assessment centers. I did really well, and I think I would have gone through it. Like, they were so impressed by me, the way I was doing things, and considering my energy and all that. But at the end of the recruitment assessment center, the recruitment director called me into her office. He said, do you have any other visa, Danny? Other than that, do you have any other visa that you can apply, you can work in the UK on? And I was like, no, the only visa that I have is student visa. And she said, we really cannot make you go ahead with this particular job. And I literally cried in that room. So I think the recruitment director called me into her office and she said, Danny, if you don't have any other visa, you cannot go on to this grad scheme. And I literally cried in that room. And I was like, why, oh why? Maybe somebody should have given me some warning in between. Even the websites on the employers, it was at that time, it was the onus was on the student to make sure they have the right to work. Now the websites are much better. They ask you these questions at the very start. They keep on asking you visas and stuff. So it's better. But in my time, it wasn't like that. So it was a very weird experience. So many schemes I applied for, get all these loops and hurdles that you have to go through in grad schemes, and got to one where you were actually about to get it and then you could not get it. So student experience at that time was good, but careers and employability experience wasn't that good. And I had to self-learn every single thing from community of practices.
One of the things that I've come to, realize that way back in 2018, when we see jobs online there, recruiters don't mention whether they're going to sponsor visa or not. All right. But coming back after Brexit, we have there is either we are sponsoring visa or we're not sponsoring visa, which is, a shift, and I think also one of the challenges that companies faces is not understanding the way to onboard international students into their workforce. But we'll get to that. So, what do you think are the biggest challenges that the international students face when trying to secure employment in the UK?
I think the biggest challenge starts with themselves. Not a lot of people will say this thing. I think I'm more of there's this concept of locus of control, which means are you control of your own destiny, or will you put it on the external environment? I think it's a bit of both, but again, as I say, this is the best time to be in the UK. Right now in the UK, if you are not, as an international student, if you are not getting a job within those 2 years of graduate route, I think it's on you. It's definitely on you, because there are jobs, it's the decisions that you take will guide you towards that. And not a lot of people would say that. And a lot of people would usually come because me being from that, I've lived through this. So I've lived experience of this, and I help students. So if you ask me what is the biggest challenge, it starts with themselves. I think taking the right decisions and getting support from the career services and people like me, or get some mentors, or ask people around you, and the mindset that needs to change when they come here. A lot of international students look because let's talk about different cultures. So India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, South Asia, and then we have the African nations, all of them. And we have I've worked in 4 universities in 4 years, very quickly, in different universities, and have dealt with a lot of different nationalities. I think every single one, if you look at it, I'll give you my number. And I did a research a few years ago. Nearly 85 to 90% wants to stay here. Okay. So when you come with that mindset to stay here, it pushes you to make some mistakes. So there's no harm in having this mindset. Even I came with that one. Everyone does, because we spend a lot of money to come here, to reach this place. And everyone, nearly 90% would want to stay. So with that mindset, you make desperate mistakes. For example, let's take some mistakes like what kind of part-time jobs are you doing? I know in different cities there are different level of part-time jobs available. There are some big cities where it's easy to find jobs. There are other cities which are difficult to find jobs. It's all about having that energy in you to keep looking. Because let's talk about this, because this is a podcast. This has to be natural and honest. So I always have this part-time job continuum I talk about. It's like a spectrum. It's like a spectrum of part-time jobs when you come here. On the right end, there are all sorts of stuff which students should not be doing. And let's talk about it. People do cash in hand jobs. They shouldn't be doing it, but they do those things. And then the worst kind of part-time job that I see a lot of students commit, especially from South Asia, is security jobs. So now that pays a lot of money, but then again adds no value to your career. Now these are little mistakes. For money, for desperate measures, you do them. And then there are there are so many jobs available in warehousing industry. You start working there. I don't mind warehouse, but the problem is if you get complacent in it. That's the biggest problem I see with international students. When you start doing something, they think when they get something, they just need to stay in it. But remember, they don't have the luxury of time as compared to local home students. So you need to keep on moving. For example, if you it's good to get a job, get it quickly, whichever you get. I don't mind, get a warehouse job. But while you get it, the day you start that job, keep on applying for the other ones. Keep on applying. So that's what I believe. The continuum starts from those weird cash in hand jobs to warehouse jobs. In the middle is hospitality, which is restaurants, food and stuff. And the best kind of part-time job is retail, customer service, where you actually where you improve your communication skills. This is a spectrum from cash in hand jobs to security jobs to warehouse to hospitality to finally the left hand, which is retail. And I always say to them, tell me, when you are on the right end of the spectrum in those jobs, do you see any local students? They said, no, all we see is people like us. I'm like, okay. On the left end in retail, do you see local students? They're like, yes, all local students, college students, British students are working in retail. I'm like, there you go. It shows in the eyes of a recruiter which part-time job will be more respected and will be easy to justify and would have more transferable skills. So these little decisions. So you can start in whichever part-time job you want to, but move towards the left. Move towards the right kind of part-time job. So these mistakes. So I'll give you an example, Matthew. If you're doing an MSc Accounting and Finance, and because of circumstances you're working in warehouse, and you're working in warehouse for the whole year, now that's your mistake, Matthew. That is a mistake of the student. Because and then you put it on the recruiters, like later on, I know the environment outside is not that conducive, is not as much conducive as we want it to be. The employers have its problems on that end as well. But then again, when you make these kind of mistakes, then you don't even deserve to be in that line where other people who are making that hustle and making it happen. So nearly 50, 60, 70%, I would say, because I deal with international students a lot and I work with them very closely, Matthew, in a very unorthodox way. I ask them to email me and I can book you appointments. I have done weekend appointments. I have done out of office hours work with them, 6, 7 p.m. So I do a lot for them. And hence, when I say these things, my sample size is huge in terms of the students I see. So I think the challenge starts with them making these wrong mistakes, starting from the part-time job they get. From that onwards they do. And then the other mindset, which is, half of the students get the part-time jobs. Nearly 30, 40 students who are from a bit better background, I would say affluent background, they make the biggest mistake. They wait for the best kind of part-time job, which is, can I get a part-time job in my field, accounting and finance, or maybe I'm an engineer. Can I get a 16-hour gig in engineering? I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. Why didn't you ask me that? And they come to me in the second semester, Danny, I'm still looking for a part-time job. I'm like, wow. In the UK, and mark these words, being idle is the biggest crime you could do. You cannot stay idle. Every day you're losing time. precious, experience that you could get, and money, obviously. In the UK, you cannot stay still. Being idle. Don't be idle. Be an idle. IDOL. Be that kind of idle. Don't be idle. Don't be lethargic in the UK. So this second mindset. Oh, my culture, it doesn't allow me to work in retail. We do come from that kind of culture. It's still much better with the African nations, I see. But with the South Asian nations, oh my God, they are entitled as anything. And I was part of it. I was part of the problem, trust me. Because especially when you come to the UK, it means you're not from a very lower middle class in your country. You could afford the fees. See? So you wouldn't have done these jobs in your country. It's clear. My first job, and I'm proud to say this, not proud, but I share this, that my first job was after my MBA. Can you imagine, back in my country, my first job, I haven't worked until my MBA. So we do come from that kind of a culture and that kind of a privileged environment. When you come here, you need to quickly adapt. Because if you don't adapt, the only thing I say helped me was that I adapted. I was like, okay, let's make this happen because of my energy, because I had it. But I think this is what every student needs. I always say this. The first 3 years in the UK, your master's, 2 years of graduate visa, please don't stay still. Make things happen. And this mindset, when I came in, I was like, okay. And I will say this on the podcast right now. My first part-time job, I got it after 2 months. So people come and say, oh, Danny, there are no jobs. I'm so disappointed. Yesterday, I got an email from a student who said, oh, Danny, I'm so disappointed. I'm not getting any job, part-time job. And can you know, he just applied for roles for 10 days. He got sad in 10 days. I'm like, wow, how could you do that to you? It is a tough market. Make it happen. Be out there. So me being with these kind of skills, I got my first part-time job. Lancaster was a small city, so it's difficult to get part-time roles. My first role was after 2 months. And that role was, and I have no shame in telling that, was a kitchen porter. My first part-time role was kitchen porter. I was a regional manager back in my country. Regional manager, Matthew. So handling teams for 3 cities. This is the cultural shock, or whatever kind of shock you will call it, happens. But you need to make it happen and quickly then adapt. So my first role was kitchen porter. I did that for 2 weeks. Then I got the Primark gig. So I used to work for Primark. And then I was just working for Primark for the whole year or so. But there you go. So this is how you hustle. This mindset needs to change. The first mindset is that what kind of part-time job you should get. And then the second mindset is you should get a part-time job, irrespective of what it is. And these kind of little things, because these are some of the things which you only learn by experience. And I see, and I love to be candid and very honest with it. I'm brutally honest with this, because these are little things students should know. And the third mindset is, it's a part-time job. I should not enjoy this. Looking down, devaluing your own part-time gig. Every student does that. Danny, should I mention my Primark job or my cashier job or my barrister job on my CV? I'm like, you should. And they devalue it throughout their tenure. And that is another big problem, because we as recruiters, I always tell them, and another important quote from me is, people come to me and ask me, Danny, what is my reality? I tell them, your reality is not what you think you are. Your reality is the perception of you in other people's eye. Simple as that. That is UK. UK is a very experience-based economy. It's not very evidential-based. So if you go to the interview, you can promise them something. You promise them potential, you get the job. And you can only do it when you value your experiences. I asked them, tell me what you've been doing for the last 1 year. Oh, I've been doing that. I've been working as a barista in Starbucks and all. And yeah, that's about it. So if you talk about your experience like this is the value we put in it. Simple as that. But if you say, oh, I used to work for Starbucks as a barista. I loved it. The customer service experience that I get was amazing. And I really improved my communication skills. And then it is a fast-paced environment. I know when things go wrong, how to manage that. And I loved working on Christmas Eve. The sheer immense number of customers that are coming in and still they're going away happy, that excited me. Now, talking about barista like this and talking about barista in 2 seconds, this is the whole difference. This is make or break. This is if you enjoy your part-time jobs. I was a regional manager. I should not have enjoyed my part-time job in Primark, but I did. I was like, let's just enjoy this. And I'll give you an example of why I enjoy that. I used to look to my right. I used to be on the tills, cashier. I used to look on my right and left, all local students. and they were so sad in serving customers. Like, yeah, looking at the time when, most of the students are like that. But even in a part-time job, you can excel. And what I used to do was I got a counter from, there's a counter where you click buttons, you can count stuff like a clicker. I got that clicker from Poundland, and I used to count my customers every shift I served. And what I did was I used to go home and put it in an Excel sheet. And over 3-4 months, I had data of how many customers I've served and why it fluctuated. I got an interview for a job. They asked me, can you give me a time when you handle data? I gave them my Primark data example. And they were so impressed. They were like, wow, how could a person enjoy their part-time job so much that they used to count customers? So I gave them a data analysis and a graph as to how and when I serve these customers and why it went up and why it went down. There you go. This is how you enjoy your part-time jobs. You find something in it which can be useful for your career ahead, irrespective of what you do. So this is the third mindset, which is enjoy your part-time job. So the number one mindset is get the right kind of part-time job. Number 2, please get a part-time job. Number 3 is enjoy the part-time job. And hence, this is the biggest challenge I see. This is one of the first challenges within the first year, I think, because while you're studying, all you can do, Matthew, is part-time jobs and some other things. But I think this is the biggest mindset change they need.
There are a lot of things I was able to get from what you just said. One of them is that international students are actually the problem themselves. And it boils down to them being proactive when they come into the UK. Like you said, you got your first part-time job 2 months after you came into the UK.
Yeah.
Some will still struggle for over a year. I might not even have a part-time job. And they blame the recruiters or they blame the job board because you have to go through multiple job boards like Indeed, Glassdoor, and so many of them. And it's quite interesting when you say the hustle. So we need to put on that hustle spirit. So you mentioned around communication, which is a key thing too. How do you communicate your transferable skills you gained from somewhere to a potential employer? So what is the role of communication when it comes to international students? What does it play in getting a job here in the UK?
Yeah, I think everything is communication here. If you look at it, as I told you, it is an experience-based economy. Your CV, your papers, your career documents, your cover letters would never do the job. They would get you the interview. At the end of the day, interview is where you make or break your chances. And that is all communication, you actually talking to the people in front of you. And then I think it plays a lot of part, because I've seen over the years some great students who had some great examples but could not communicate well, and hence they cannot get the job. And I'm very frank with this, and let's talk about this. Now, having worked in 4 different universities, nearly I would say I would have dealt with nearly 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 students personally. International students, and that's a huge number if you know them personally, at least those many students. And I will say this very, very frankly, the UK's international student postgraduate market is very commercial. Let's talk about this elephant in the room. It is very, very commercial. When I say that it's very commercial, is that it's very, very easy to get in. And I'm very frank with this, Matthew. And nothing against international students, nothing against this whole thing of coming to a new country and starting your journey. But then again, if you do not land here with nothing, with no existing skills at all, within this 1 year, let's be honest, you cannot turn into some other person all of a sudden. Let's talk about it, because this is very, very important. Because then you get 2 kind of students here in the UK, Matthew. There are students who actually have the skills and can make this happen. Okay, and then there are students who should not have arrived here with the kind of skills that they have right now, and hence those kind of students are more in number than the students who can make it work in the UK. The problem is the people who have the skills, they look up to those students like, okay, everyone is suffering, oh my god. So it's like people who should not have been here are more in number. People who actually have the skills, they get demotivated by looking at them. So it's a very mishmash of these students, and not everyone, nobody I would think in the UK would have the courage to say what I'm saying right now. Literally, it is a very commercialized market. It is very easy to come, and I'm telling you, because One of my brother's business back in the country, in my country, is to help students get into these universities.
Yeah.
And UK is the easiest market to come into. America, Canada, Australia are difficult. You don't get student visas easily. So the reason UK has made it easier for people to come here is because they know it's difficult to settle. It's a small country, saturated place, geographical area is small. They know these students will go back. And students should know this. It's so weird that back in our country, students listen to educational consultants and all of these people, and they just come here without knowing what it would take them to stay here. And not everyone has those skills to make it happen, Matthew. Let's be honest about this. Let's take English for an example. I do not say that your English needs to be very top notch. Even I do not speak very flawless English. I do make a lot of grammatical errors, but it's fine. They get ignored because I speak with passion. Now imagine a student who can barely speak in English, and they must have passed some sort of IELTS or English test, and God knows what kind of test, these Duolingo tests, online tests, they're easy to pass. And then these foundation years, every university has a foundation year. So if you don't match their criteria, come to the foundation year, we'll improve your English and everything, and then you can start your masters. Such a trap if you look at it. So people are here with next to none or zero communication skills. Now if you ask me, Matthew, should we be helping them? I'm like, yes, but should we be helping them now? No, they should get help before they come to the UK, Matthew.
Yeah.
That's where the pre-induction starts. That's where the dream, when you are about to make a UK dream, that's where we should be involved at. That's where people like you, Matthew, or us, they should get in touch with us while they're planning to come to the UK. They ask us, we do an interview with them, sit down with them. Okay, tell me, do you have the skills right now to make it in the UK? And we will then tell them, no, right now, if you come to the UK, it's actually a dream which will never come true. And I see that. I see students in classrooms every time, wherever I go. There are students who should not have been here in the first place. And I'm not against him. I am part of this clientele. I am part of international students. So I'm not like an enemy to them. But when I see them, I tell them, and some of them have great skills in terms of their fields. But if you can't talk in the UK, if you can't talk in English or flawlessly, simple as that, you can't make it. And nothing against employers, Matthew. If somebody cannot convey their messages, cannot communicate well, why would you hire them? You tell me. Even if they're great programmers, if they're great skills, but they cannot work in a team. That's the biggest problem. And hence this is the biggest thing I see. So you ask communication is everything here. Because if you cannot communicate, nobody is there to do the communication for you. It would never work out for you in the UK. So I think we need to scale back to when they arrive here, when they're about to make a plan to come to the UK, to assess the level of communication they're at. If you could wait for a year or two and improve your skills in your country, please do. There's so many ways you could do this. I improved my English looking at movies and stuff over the years. But I think speak more in English, the better you get at it. Simple as that. Hence, when I say go to the right kind of part-time jobs, why people don't do that? Communication skills. Because warehouse, you barely talk with people. So that's why. So they stay there. They're like, yeah, who can be bothered to improve the communication skills and go towards retail because you have to talk. So why do people stay complacent? That's the reason. Because they're like, I cannot qualify for a retail job because I cannot talk in English that flawlessly. And remember, I'm not saying that you need to be very fluent in English. No. Or have an accent. No, not an accent. Look at me. Do I have an accent? No. I have my own mishmash of accents. See, some American lingos in there, some British touch, and some Indian touch in it, Indian Pakistani touch in it. But I speak with my heart out, with passion. If you have this, it's fine. No matter what your skills are, it's fine. But if you cannot speak with passion, then you better have good skills, because you need to convey something to them, at least something. So you do not need an IELTS 8 to be a great communicator. No, you don't need the best words or terminologies or in terms of, you don't need to use the best. You should not be a human thesaurus. You should not have all the synonyms of the world in your mind. No, you should be able to convey your message in a fluent way with confidence. So communication is confidence, simple as that. Communication is all about confidence. Like you should be able to speak your mind up. I'll give you an example, Matthew, a very fun example. International students, they barely talk in the classrooms. You know why? The problem is it's not that they don't have questions or they don't understand the topic. They do understand the topic. The thing is, because of their lack of confidence and communication skills, what happens is there's a thing called thinking in your own language. When you come to the UK first, they do not have the habit to think in English. They think in their own language, then quickly translate it into some English words, and then they ask a question. By that time, the teacher has already moved on into a new topic, or maybe at the next slide. Hence, you see a lot of international students don't speak up in the class for that particular reasons, thinking in their own language. How would you develop that? You need time for it. So try and start doing it in your own country. So these little things that I've noticed over the years, even I was like that. I used to see, when I first came in Lancaster, I used to find the best words so that I can rephrase my question in the best way. And by that time, the chance was already gone.
It's gone, yeah.
But now I can tell you, you do not need to rephrase. Just ask a question. Passion, confidence is everything. The right kind of English is not. You do not have to be flawless or have the best English lingo to make it work. Confidence is communication. Yeah, I think that's the word. That's the phrase. Confidence is communication. Simple as that.
Thank you for that. I am going to fly away with that. And some of the things you actually made mention of is that the two categories of students that we have, international students precisely, the ones that can make things happen and the ones that cannot make things happen, more yet than the ones that make things happen. And it's now becomes a gray area. Who can assist those people who can make things happen? Because I think it still comes down to the recruitment. How did they get to the UK? Who is a career advisor? What process did they go through? What support is in the university to be able to assist them? Like you mentioned, it's true. The universities in the UK have the foundational year where they ask to come in, I think, a couple of months before your course starts, so you can polish up some English. But some international students don't make use of that. We need to be frank about that.
Yep.
Some international students don't make use of that because I think they don't need it.
Yep.
But they need it. This is an English-speaking country, so if you cannot communicate in English, and like you say, you don't have to speak a flawless English.
Yeah.
You just have to be confident about it. You have to be enthusiastic about telling your story to the recruiter or whoever you're communicating to, which is very, very important point there. And one striking thing that got me amazed is the perspective of people, of international students precisely, who work in warehouse. I wasn't aware that they don't do much of talking there, but it kind of now makes sense and resonates to me that that's true. So you don't get to talk a lot, then you just do your work, get paid at the end of the month, then you are done.
Yep.
And I think that's a challenge, because if you want to build a career here, one thing I tell international students is simple. The UK job market is competitive.
Yep.
So if you are not good at what you do, if you cannot communicate what you can do, nobody's going to listen to you.
Exactly.
And in a world where recruiters have metrics, have numbers they need to hit, so they have other candidates to go to. So you have to be, and it wasn't like what is called elevator speech. Within 15-30 seconds, you should be able to pitch your business idea to an investor, to be able to say, you know what, I need to have this conversation with you. Let's carry on with this conversation. I mean, like you said, the international students, the problem starts from the international students.
Yep.
Some of them feeling entitled, some of them coming not being prepared, and some of them waiting for the last hour. And some of them not understanding that the time on the visa is so limited that the moment you get to the UK, it starts running really, really fast.
Yeah.
And before you know it, your visa expiration is near, and you start running like, I need a job. But that's not the time you need to now start checking for jobs.
Exactly. And I think on that point, it's a very important point. Though the time is ticking, you still need to make informed choices, not just make apply for jobs, because I see that the biggest mistake they do is I've seen students and I always stop them. I'm like, they apply for full-time jobs while they're studying. I'm like, why did you do that? And then they get rejected, or even they get the interview. I'm like, why are you going for an interview for a job you can't even start on this visa? Why are you doing that to yourself? They're like, oh, because I was under pressure, because time was ticking. Now these are, and that person was working in a warehouse. I'm like, you are so good that you're getting interviews for a full-time job and you're still working in a warehouse. So why not first move away from the warehouse and get into a really good part-time job and enjoy that? So the biggest mistake I see with them is they waste time and energy, because energy is precious. And then this whole vibe that you get from the UK, if you start applying for wrong jobs, you start getting rejected and dejected, demoralized, you get the negative vibes from the whole scenario that you're in the UK. Why did I come in the first place? So don't put that yourself. Please do justice to yourself and don't put yourself under that pressure. Remember, while you're studying on a student visa, part-time job is all you should apply for, you should get. Simple as that. Do not start applying for full-time jobs all of a sudden and say, oh, maybe what? Weird answers people give me. Oh, let me just apply for a full-time job, and then if I get it, I'll tell them I can just do 20 hours. And then maybe because they like me, can they just give me 20 hours? I'm like, why are you doing this? Why? Why is that? Why this mistake that you're making? So I think this is the biggest thing. While they're studying, part-time jobs only, and they should not apply for these kind of roles which are full-time nature. Another thing that I would say on this note is, not every student knows how to read a job advert. And that's where careers advice, they should come to us. But then again, they should know this. They should know how the currency here works. Right after graduation, I see students, if they studied business analytics, okay, MSc business analytics, I see students apply for a business analyst role. Business analyst role is not an entry-level role in the UK. They think MSc business analysis gave them a right to be a business analyst. I'm like, no, it's a mid to senior level role, the business analyst. And you need to start small, start somewhere. So that's another phrase that should go into your title. Start small, start somewhere. Rather than going for, your dream job and applying for the business analyst role they keep on getting rejected from, start small. Maybe start as a business analyst, assistant level role, or a junior one, or maybe a trainee one. Get in the company. Get in a full-time, office-based, white-collar job. Get in there, just start working and then make your way up. And I always say this, start small, start somewhere, and you can make your way up. I'll give my own example, Matthew, which is, I started small, for part-time jobs. And then can you imagine my first careers gig, my careers in employability, first role was for free. So I was working for Lancaster as a mentor for them, for an enterprise mentor. But remember, in the UK, my biggest advice, when you do something for free, remember that somebody in the UK is getting paid to do that as well. So nobody needs to know that it's a volunteer for free job. It's how you sell it. It's reframing. You're not lying, but you are reframing it. So I see students say, oh, I volunteered to be a support worker. Oh, don't say that. Just say, I've been working as a support worker doing blah, blah, blue, blee, because somebody got paid to do the same job. You did it for free. So value your experiences yourself. If you devalue it, they'll devalue it. So I got my first paid careers job based on the free one. Nobody needs to know, because there were enterprise advisors and mentors who were getting money for it. I did it for free. So this is how you sell your jobs. And I give you examples. So start small, free job. My first job gave me a salary of 19,000. Nothing. I took it. On a graduate visa. Also remember, I didn't have the graduate visa at that time. So in the UK, remember, students, you need to buy time. Yeah. So for you guys have the PSW graduate visa. At that time, we didn't. I bought time through the startup visa. So I had a startup idea. I was like, okay, let's just experiment with that. So I took the startup visa. On a startup visa, you can do a job as well. So I was running a startup on the side, which could have worked, could not work. But then again, I was doing my jobs as well. So I'm building a career on it as well. So these little things you need to understand. You need to buy time. And my first salary was 18,000. And then you change jobs quickly. You can do that in the UK. So you change jobs quickly. My second one was 27. The third one was 33, 45. This is how you go up. Very, very quickly, within 3.5 years, I am nearly double or 2.5 times of what I started at. See, or triple, I think triple now to what I started at. 3 years. And this is UK's opportunity for you. And I'll give you a reason as to why. I know I'm staying away from the topic, but UK's culture play a big part in it. Us international students, we can be heroes in here because UK's general population is very, calm. They want to stay in one place for so long, and then they are very humble in how they work. Most of the population, you see around you, I see people work in their jobs for 5 years, 10 years minimum. I'm like, how could you stay in one company for that long? But that is UK's culture. And they do not, because of property and family where they live, they do not move away from the geographical region. So imagine, like when you apply for a job as an international student, the whole UK's market is your playground. You are not stuck with, you don't have property here, you don't have family here. You just pack your bag, you go where the job takes you.
Yeah.
So you could, sitting in London, get a job in some Scottish village, you go there, you go. And can you imagine the job you're applying for in the Scottish village? Who's your competition there? Only those 5 or 6 people within that Scottish village. So now, are you telling me is it tough to get a job in the UK? No. You should know where to look and how to look for these roles. Because imagine, people don't move all over. Only the international students will think about it. And even they don't. And when I hear this from an international student, you know what, Danny, I love London, or I have friends in London, that's where I want the job. I'm like, why are you putting yourself under that pressure or just applying for one geographical area? The whole UK is your market. Apply wherever the job takes you, go. So I went to Scotland. So I got from Lancaster, I went to Scotland, lived in Scotland for 2 years. Worked for Glasgow Caledonian University. There you go. This is how you do this. And then I went to London, from Glasgow to London again, then London to Northampton. So there you go. You keep on moving. You keep on experimenting, and you never know where I'm next. But there you go. So this is hustle. This is hustle for you. And the graduate visa allows you to do that. You can work in any company. You're not bound with a contract. No skilled worker visa at that time. So you can do whatever you want to. All you need is hustle. Keep on moving. And that would get you the salary up, get you more autonomy, get you better jobs. Simple as that. So I think.
And I think one of the important aspects of recruitment in the UK also is representation. Because earlier you mentioned that if universities, most precisely, let's start from there, because the university has told the UK government that we want to sponsor these XYZ students that come to the UK. So it starts from the university.
Yep.
So if the university does not have the right representation within their recruitment team, then it's not possible to be able to have a seamless journey for international students. And it comes down to people like yourself. When you are in that role, you're able to tell the candid truth to international students.
True.
If these are your expectations in the UK, you might need to buckle up in some areas. You might need to work on this and work on that. But the home country students or employees do not know that, because it's not their story.
Yeah.
It's our own story. So it's our own problem. So we understand how to solve the problem.
Exactly.
After coming to the UK. Thank you so much for that insight, Danny. So I think another thing we should look at is what particular industry and sectors are open to hiring international students, and why do you think they are open to employing international students?
I think if in terms of the industries, I think I'll give an answer which you think might be very generic, but I think is any industry for that matter can get international students. And again, I say this, and again and again, I'll say this. It's the onus is on the student, him or herself, because if you have what it takes, any industry will be happy to take you. It's just this, when you apply for, when you said taking international students, I hope so you did talk about the skilled worker visa in a way, that on a sponsorship visa. Other than that, for a job, you can work for any company. Let's talk about it in a different way. So on a graduate visa, people start applying for these grad schemes. And I've been hearing these things that not a lot of grad schemes are willing to take international students because they are longer than that, like 3 years or something like that. And even on a grad visa, nearly not everyone would want, even with 2 years right to work, nobody takes you. That's what students tell me. So, and those students are only applying for these grad schemes, which are with very large companies. Not all the companies do grad schemes, Matthew.
Yeah.
And those are not only the companies. And I'll give you statistics. Grad schemes and all these fancy recruitment things that we see online, in the September, October, December season of recruitment, those are just 35% of the jobs for grads. Those fancy things which are the most sought after and the most well marketed ones, because in that season when you go online, all you find, if you search on Google, you won't be able to find a job. All you see is grad schemes, and people think those are everything. Those are just 35, mind you. 35% of the jobs for grads are grad schemes. The rest of the 65% jobs are open market roles. So the difference between an open market role and a grad scheme is they'll call a grad scheme a grad scheme. For example, if a grad scheme is for an engineer, they'll call it graduate engineering scheme. Yeah. The same job will exist in another engineering company and they'll just call it junior assistant, trainee assistant, and startup assistant, something like that. They would just call it by what it is. In a grad scheme, they'll call it grad scheme, graduate, and blah, blah. The same job exists elsewhere. So that's the biggest problem that I see, that international students should know this difference between the grad schemes and the open market roles. So they know when to apply for these things, and only then they can, and then any industry becomes available for them. Simple. Like on a graduate visa, on the PSW, you have 2 years right to work. They waste a lot of time applying for big companies. And isn't it better to apply for, I'll give an example. You want to apply for big engineering company, and you'll go through the whole process of these stagements of recruitment, assessment centers, and God knows what. And then, you might not get selected and you'll waste a lot of time. What if there is a small engineering company in your town with 50 employees? They have a role called engineering assistant or some sort of assistant engineering role. Why don't you apply for it? You apply for it and the process is very straightforward. You get an interview. After the interview, you get the job. So why don't you work for a small engineering company just to get the career started? And now the question is, will they hire a person on the graduate visa? Yes, they do, because they know nobody would work for their company for more than 2 years. This person has the right to work for 2 years. It's all about how you explain it. And you just go and explain, yes, I have the right to work. They ask you this question in the interview or before the interview. Do you have the right to work? Yes, we do have the right to work. Yes, say yes to it. Say yes to it. Yeah, I have the right to work. And then you just apply for the role. And if you get the interview, you tell them, I can work for you for 2 years. After that, if you like me, we can work together and I can help you become a sponsor. No problem. It only takes £4,000. I can get you a lawyer and things can work out for us. But for now, in this role, if you like me as who I am, if I can do the job well, please hire me. So just have this kind of a demeanor with you when you apply, go to interviews. Tell them you have the right to work there and then. And it's much, much easier for these small companies to just take you because they have this position to fill. And 2 years is a long time and they're happy to have you in this role if they like you. So the biggest problem starts when you start talking about visas and sponsorships when they first start talking to you. For example, if they sent an invite for the interview or something like that, in that interview, in that communication, you just ask for them, oh, do you sponsor visas? Do you do that? You never ask this question to small companies. You never do that. Get the interview, get them to like you. Then when the HR gets in touch with you with the offer letter, that's when you drop the bomb. That's when you drop the bomb. Literally, be clever. Do not talk about visas and your status till after that. Get the interview. And it's not lying. It's not lying. I'll tell you why. It's not lying. So when you apply for a role, if you say you have right to work, just say you have right to work. Do not explain what kind of right to work you have. So don't say right to work graduate visa. You'll get less interviews. Be clever. Just apply like a local person, like a home student, and get the interview. If they like you, then they'll get and then when HR will get in touch, that's where you go and tell them, like, this is my right to work. This is what my status is. Now, by that time, they were about to offer you the offer letter. They were about to give you the job. Now they will listen to you. This is small companies listen, so they can get you the job. But large companies, they have a systematic way and they waste a lot of time in that way. So if you ask me which industries, every industry, every job you can do on a graduate visa, every job. And in those 2 years, you'll make your brand, you'll work hard and make your way up and do 2 to 3 jobs, get your salary up to a certain level. After that, you're so valuable that visa becomes an afterthought. you get the job, they will give you the visa. I'll tell you a reason. People apply for visas at what bracket? They are fighting for visas at £25,600. That's the minimum one, yeah? Everyone is fighting for that. You never get a good visa or visa around that time. What if you get your first job of 25,000? You say, just give me the job. I don't need the visa. Don't talk about visas. And in 2 years' time, you'll get your salary up to maybe 36, 37, right? You change jobs. At 37, you are such a valuable asset that any company that you would apply for would want to give you a visa. And at that time, you would have that, have the leverage. You will be valuable at that time. You have 3 years or 2 years worth of experience in the UK. You are somebody at that time. And then companies will hire you for your skill and then think about the visa. So it helps you. It helps you later onwards. But in one answer, if you want me to give you one industry which would give you visa for sure, irrespective of what I said before, is the higher education industry. So if you want to answer to one thing, which industry gives you visas no matter what? Higher education. So I think that's the best industry to work in, because higher education confirm would give you a visa when you work for them. All the universities, all 130 of them in the UK, they would be able to give you visas for a lot of roles. So I think that's the easiest way to do this if you look at it. If you have nowhere to go, higher education. If you're passionate for it, come here, because it is a really, really good industry. I always say this. We need a lot of international students in it, because higher education is run. We are the cash cows. We give them the money.
Exactly.
We should have more representation in the universities. So I think if a lot of students, if they have the energy and have the experience to share with other people, please apply for higher education. There's so many support roles you can work into. And that is the reason I went into careers and employability. I just wanted to be that careers consultant I never had. Just to be that person that I never got the support so I wanted to give that support to other people. So that's why I started in careers. I was like, this is as us as startup people and entrepreneurial mindset people, that's what I said. That's what I found out. I was like, there need to be more representation in the universities. Hence, that's the reason I went into careers and employability. I was like, I need to be that person who need to support international students. So this is how it all started. Hence, if you ask me which industry, every industry, but on the side, yes, higher education.
Danny, thank you so much for that. And one of the things you said resonates, and it's some of the things that we also tell students to. Don't start with the sponsorship conversation at the beginning of your interview.
Yeah.
Show to them that you are a valuable candidate, that you're going to be a valuable potential employee. Give them reason why they need to employ you. And after, like you said, it's not lying. It's you communicating what you want to tell them. At the end of the day, they will definitely know that you need a sponsorship, but that's not the start of your conversation. The start of
don't scare them.
Don't scare them, because most employers get scared when they talk about sponsorship. And like you mentioned, a lot of international students focus on the big firms. And the truth now is that statistics shows it. Small medium enterprise are now registering for license.
Yes.
They are sponsoring international students. They have the vacancy. Their processes is not as rigorous as the big companies.
Exactly.
So why don't you target those companies? Prove your worth to them. One of the things I tell students is, they tell me, they say they have 2 years post-study work visa. How can they utilize it? I'm looking for a sponsored job. Get the job first.
Get the job first.
Get a job. Prove to them that you are an exceptional candidate for maybe 6 months. Then probably after 6 months or thereabouts, you can then begin to now maybe weigh your option.
Exactly.
With them, because sometimes some companies might be slow at wanting to sponsor you compared to other companies.
Exactly.
And because you have a time ticking on your visa, you need to move fast to the next person or to the next, employer. So thank you so much for that. I mean, you mentioned around being valuable. How can you interpret that you're a valuable candidate to your employer? Should be the mindset of international student looking for a job that is after graduates. And I think one of my questions will be around, there are some international students who don't need the graduate role because they build experiences back home where they are coming from, and they can start on a very good level. So what would you advise the kind of international student? Because not every international student are new into the industry. Yeah. So, what would you advise those international students who has had like an exceptional experience
Hmm.
from back home,
Hmm.
in finding job here in the UK?
Yep. I think the advice remains the same for one reason, which is the trust element. As I always say this, you need to understand, and it's not discriminatory or in any sense. It's very human. It's very human of the recruiters. It's simple as that. It's difficult to trust the outsider. Simple, and it is true. No matter what you do, it is a human psyche. um people love things with they are familiar with. It's simple as that. It's called the mere exposure effect. The more you see something, the more you're familiar with it, and more preference you'll have of the similar thing. All this diversity agenda is amazing, but at the end of the day, remember one thing: diversity and the international student diversity, these are two different things, because they could get homegrown diversity as well. They'll have people of our skin who are born here, right?
Yeah.
So it's not that, it's homegrown diversity there as well. So international student diversity, it's a different agenda. And it's a different agenda, remember this, because especially when you look at organizations trying to become diverse and all that, and all diversify their portfolios. Not necessarily international students is part of that quota. It's not that. So remember this, so that you should know that is a different thing. So if you talk about applying for these jobs and how they can get into this industry, and how international students can work their way up, and people who have experience, they need to know the trust element is not on their side right now. So the reason I say start small, start somewhere, is for this particular reason. It's easier to trust you in a lower level role, an entry level role, than a mid tier or a higher tier senior level role. With more responsibility, it needs more trust. With more responsibility comes more trust. Can they trust you? So for them to trust in your skills, you need to start somewhere. So even with people with experience, and we get them a lot. Let's talk about especially with the all these African nations I see, because that's my clientele nowadays a lot. We see really, really strong people coming from companies, like people with 5 years, 10 years worth of banking experience, and God knows a lot of experience. And I tell them, and they're very good to understand. I tell them, please start somewhere. Remember, then they ask me, Danny, is it actually a restart? I'm like, no. When I say start somewhere, start small, it's not a restart. You're not starting from scratch. What you're doing is you are buying trust. What you're trying to do is you get into an office. So I'll give an example. Your first job is based on potential, not your skills. Your first job in the UK, an office-based job, is not based on your prior experience or skills. No, it's based on the promise and trust that you can build in the interview. When you get your first office-based job, even if you have 5 years, 10-year experience in your country, and if this job is of lower level, no problem. You start working for them, you work for them 5-6 months. Now, the next job, you can apply for a manager level role if you were a manager in your country. Now, those people will trust your skills and would know that somebody trusted this guy to put him or her into an office. Now the trust element is already sorted. The trust element is sorted, you just being in an office. So I always say this, it's only the first office-based job in the UK which is the most difficult to get. After that, it becomes easier, because everyone thinks, yeah, he's already working for a UK company. Yeah. What are your skills? Now they ask you about your skills. So this is my advice for people with experience. I think they are the biggest culprits, because they waste a lot of time. They think they have a lot of experience from their country and they deserve better. But remember, it's human psyche. No matter how talented you are, people fear the outsider and take advantage of that. So if you know this, please take advantage of this. You know this, trying to get a smaller role, get into the industry, and then make your way up. Simple as that. So that's my biggest advice.
Wow, thank you so much for that, Danny. And I think that is quite very valuable to the international student community. And I think you mentioned something that I think we should start as a movement: international student diversity.
Yep.
It is true, because companies these days talk about diversity, but international students are not there. And international students are like the definition of diversity, because these are people coming from the so-called minority group.
Yeah, ethnicities. So if you look at it, just to add here, so for example, if they say we cater all ethnicities in our teamwork and our workforce, and they're fine in it, because if they say we hire Pakistani people, but those Pakistani people are British-born Pakistanis, so that those are not international. So hence, I think in their diversity agenda, in their diversity documents, they should have a quota, a separate area for international diversity things. So you're right, definitely.
Wow, thank you. Though I think we need to kind of expatiate on that international student diversity at the later on.
Exactly.
Because companies need to be aware of that international students are the definition of diversity. Immigrants coming to the UK are the definition of diversity.
All these universities, everywhere we go, we have these BME, BAME networks.
Yeah,
we call it.
Of BAME network.
Yeah, exactly. So those things. But if you look at the definition and of BAME and all, and how education looks at it, so you might have been a president of BAME and all, but if you look what BAME or BME stands for in the educational numbers, international students are not catered in it. So if you look at it, so BME graduation numbers, BAME continuation numbers, I'm talking about academic things like how universities are ranked, how universities courses are valued. So these bodies, HESA and all these bodies which evaluate courses and their performance, a degree performance, how well the students are doing for that particular degree. And what is the gap? This is called the BAME gap or something like BAPE and white students gap. So what is the gap between continuation? How many white students finish degrees? How many BAME students? How many black students finish? It's so funny. So if you are an African student who is black, you are not counted in that black figure. You are not counted towards that BM figure. So none of the things they do to lessen the gap applies to you, because you are though black, but you are an international black student. So you don't count. It's so funny. Like all the stuff people, universities do here to bridge the gap between different ethnicities is local only. So I always say this, so we have this black networks and stuff here. I'm like you are a black student, African students, they come to me, they say okay, this job has come up for black minorities. Oh, can I apply for it? I'm like, though you are black, but you can't. See, because they're for black home students. I'm like, it's weird. It's so weird. Like, what's the point? It's selective diversity. It's selective diversity if you look at it. Yeah, it's filtered. It's filtered diversity. Yeah, we want diversity, but you have to pass through this filter. Oh, you're international. Oh, you cannot pass through the pose. I'm sorry, you're filtered away. So filtered selective diversity needs to change.
So, Danny, with your experience, okay, have you seen any positive changes or trends in the job market for international students, in the recent years?
With regards to employers, yeah.
Yeah, what do you think is driving these changes?
Okay, I think Brexit played a big part. The reintroduction of the graduate route plays a big part in it. Now I see more companies actively talking about visas. So that's a big change. You see, I always use LinkedIn. I ask students to use LinkedIn if they were looking for jobs as well. LinkedIn is such a cool place where you just write in the job search bar when you go to jobs on LinkedIn jobs. I say don't write the name of the job you want for. Write skilled worker visa in the search bar, and you see a lot of companies who are talking about skilled worker visa in their job adverts. Mm-hmm. So that's a great way to start. And find an industry you want to go in. And this is how you look for sponsorships, because a lot of people, they search for the wrong things. They search for the role they want to apply for. Then they find the company who would be able to give a sponsorship. It's a long way. So it's a long route towards finding that. But if you find skilled worker visa first and see which industries are giving it, and then maybe find your transferable skills that can be used in that particular industry, because you need to start somewhere. Because I always say, for example, if you're a data scientist, let's not take a data scientist experience because they usually get sponsorships. You are a physicist. You're a physicist and you're looking for a sponsorship. And if you do not get a physicist role with sponsorship, see where your physics knowledge can work. what other skills you have and which other industries you can go into. So I think there's a big change in the industry now. People are talking about graduate visas, skilled worker visas. They're not that well educated, I can agree right now, but at least they're aware. So this next stage is education. Awareness is always there. We need to educate themselves as universities, plus the students themselves as well. They need to educate them, and they need to educate them with enthusiasm. Not all the students know how to do this, and I always, all my conversation come down back to students, because you're here to make it work. You should know all these things. I usually have a script that I give to students. I'm like, this is how you talk about your visa status to employers, and promise them good things, and it's easier. Tell them it's easier to hire you, not difficult to hire you. Be sure, do your research. Any question that they might ask you about your status, you should know the answer to. So these kind of things. So there's a strong change in the industry, which will only increase with time. But I think, again, things come down to students explaining things. No matter how the industry is, please make sure you explain it well.
Thank you very much for that. I mean, you mentioned that the responsibility is with the international students. How do you think that organizations and, most importantly, universities can help? Because if the responsibility is on the international students, it also still boils down to who are the players in the industry. The players in the industries are the employers seeking employees to work for them. How do you think organizations, universities, companies, large and small companies, can play a part in the transitioning of international students becoming a full-time employee with them?
Okay, so now let's be very honest with this, because they can play a big part. Would they want to play a big part? That's the next question. Because look at it, companies are businesses. I have my whole background have been in business education, Matthew. So companies, at the end of the day, they're for-profit companies. They need money. They have certain targets. Yeah. So expecting this from them, this honest thing that this honest educational drive that they should run, and they should educate themselves and become more conducive to international students. It's too much to ask from them. Let's be honest with this. If you ask me, it's great to live in a utopian ideal world, Matthew, and expect everyone to be very selfless and altruistic. But nobody is. Very few people are. So companies, especially capitalistic companies, are not. So if we expect this whole agenda, when I sit in meetings online with those academic people and all these careers people, they think we should, fight for this agenda of making companies more aware and educated of this. The company should be on board this whole agenda of hiring international students. But do they really care? No. Then there's another agenda that you did talk about as well, that the value of hiring international people. Are international students actually better, or maybe at the same level, or do they add a lot of value to these employers? That is where, again, it's our job. It's our job, because why would they become more conducive for a subpar product? I'm hypothetically saying this, like, if the international students are not a great product, why would they care for us? Simple as that. And that is a double-edged sword, because it is the problem. And I told you, there are a chunk of international students who should not have been here.
Yeah.
So imagine if they're applying for the same role, the employers know what kind of level they are from, right? Yeah. So now they'll be like, okay, a lot of people are saying us to be more conducive and more better to international students, but look at them. What the level is. So why should we change our practices to get this subpar product? So remember this. Them changing very quickly is not going to happen. And them changing this agenda and hiring, because at the end of the day, they want the best for their business. Simple as that. We need to fight on the other agenda, which is again with us and the universities and with the students themselves.
Okay.
How to prove that you are the best product. That's where we need idols, case studies, success stories, us, people like us, who can then lead the agenda. We need more international students working for the HR department of companies where they see the value of international students, these kind of things. There should be more work on the value of international students for companies. Why do they need them? The globalization angle to it, all the internationalization angle to it, the cultural intelligent angle to it. Like, what are the real values? That piece of work is something we can work on and would make more difference rather than us expecting companies to change. It's not gonna happen. Not everyone has the audacity to say this, but I say this. No matter these agendas for companies in terms of diversity agenda, at the end of the day, they are just diversity washing. It's called diversity washing. Just like social washing, greenwashing is diversity washing.
Yeah.
Companies diversity wash their portfolios and say, yeah, we want to hire all these people, but at the end of the day, they want the best for their business. Simple as that. Do they see the value in hiring international students? Yes, they will hire more people. If no, you can't change them. So we need to change our offer to them, which is the international student itself. Universities need to play a big part in it. So you hire people who should not, you recruit people who should not have been here. So how could you expect international students to do well in the industry? So it all starts from the university recruitment as well. So if you provide a good product, they will change themselves. Simple as that. Simple. If they could get a better product homegrown, see, this, I always use this example again with organic vegetables. This whole organic thingy, right? The whole green sustainable agenda, right?
Yeah.
Trust me. They say, why don't people buy more sustainable products or sustainably sourced products and all? I'm like, they're expensive. I'm like, if you make sustainability or this whole agenda cheaper to buy, people would do it. Do not expect people to pay a premium to become green and save Mother Earth. Such a nice thing to say, such an honest thing to say if you look at it. Like, Mother Earth is dying, this whole sustainability, environmental agenda. I'm like, okay, I want to be more environmental friendly, but will it cost me more? They're like, yes. I'm like, okay, then I'm sorry. Same is the case with international students and companies. So for example, if we are the green agenda and you ask companies to buy us, and if it's tough to buy us, and if it's not what they're looking for, they're not going to do that. See? So if we do not make it easy for us to hire them and give them a good reason for them to hire us, they're not going to buy us. Just the way I would not buy responsibly sourced coffee just because it's responsibly sourced. There should be some value to me, which is it should be cheaper. See? So I would not buy something which helps the Mother Earth just because it helps the Mother Earth. Not everybody is that kind of altruist. Let's be honest with it. See, we are not, at the end of the day, we have our families to feed, we have people to live with, we have to survive in this today's world. So any good we can do, we'll never do any good by sacrificing our lives. You could do some part of it. You could be an altruist in some way. I call this effective altruism. There is a difference between altruism and effective altruism. The problem, we expect everyone to be altruist, which is selfless completely. But I say everyone can be effective altruist. Effective altruism means in your position, what you can do for other people. So for example, if you work 9 to 5, can you give that extra 1 hour, 1 day or few days a week? That is effective altruism. That is what should be expected of us as humans, as companies as well. So do not expect me to buy a premium responsibly sourced coffee all the time. But yes, if you make it easier for me, I would buy it here and there. So I would, whenever I have more disposable income, I might try to use that. And you never know, I might like it and then I might continue it. This is what as humans, we should expect of ourselves and as companies. So remember, if the product is not that great, companies will never change. Improve the product, they will change themselves.
Danny, that's quite very, very insightful because I remember when I was a student, we kind of talk about this within the international student community that the companies need to change. And I like your perspective today is that if the product is not right, the buyer or the consumer will not have reasons to buy it.
Exactly.
Which kind of makes sense because the companies have their metrics they need to meet, their target they need to meet, the performance, metrics, the quota that they need to, reach in a year. Now thinking about what you should be doing, it's not part of their objective.
No.
So it makes sense that we as career consultants or mentors within the industry should be able to assist those international students.
Exactly.
And I think another challenging thing is some international students are very slow to the change because of the cultural shifts. Like for example, you're coming from a different country from the UK. You need to understand that the way of writing CV, the way of interview in the UK are totally different from back home, which is going to be a different topic entirely because that's a broad topic on its own. But in your own word, what kind of advice would you give international students searching for jobs in the UK at this current state?
Discuss it. I think the biggest advice I would say, have the energy going. When you came here with a mission, remember the mission. You came here to settle, right? You came here to settle, and then time is taking. You should make the right decisions at the right time. Starting from the part-time jobs you take to the kind of grad schemes you apply for to the kind of open market roles you apply for. So the biggest advice is that you should know and own the journey. Nobody else is going to do that for you. Neither the careers consultants, nobody would ever do that. You can take all the advice and everything from everyone. At the end of the day, you need to have that energy to manage your journey. Simple as that. And one of the biggest things which can help your journey, and one of the biggest advice I would say after managing your journey or while you're managing your journey, is about personal branding, Matthew. We as international students, we should know the value of branding and how we could brand ourselves. And that's where the argument of the product comes in. So we could be great products, but we need to show them the value. And the best part about us is we are under a time pressure and we have the energy to stand out in the market. Energy is what lacks in the UK market. If you ask me why I say UK market is so easy to get into, energy. I wouldn't say that, nothing against the culture or anything. These guys are humble people. These guys are grounded people. Simple as that. We come from a country where we work really, really crazy hard on these things. So we get exploited. We get overworked, but it is part of our culture. So when you come from a culture where you overwork, where you're grilled a lot, please bring that energy. And over here, you'll be a hero because they don't have it here. Because I'll give you an example. 9 to 5 culture, and I'll give you an example. Let's take an example. The work I do in one day, other people can do it in 5 days. They do it. They spread it across 5 days. I can do the whole 5 days worth of work in one day. That is the power of international students. You have the power and energy to do it in one day. Do it, and then you'll be valued. That would be your brand, the person who has the energy and things to make it happen. So if you have the energy, please show it in the job. It's very, very easy to stand out in the UK market. So please own your journey. Nobody else will do that. And take right decisions. And please, the energy that you bring in, please inject that in every job that you do, from your part-time gigs to your job applications to your university presentations to your full-time jobs. Put that energy in, you will stand out, and that will be your brand.